Welcome back to our Inside the Issues special. Maybe no city in the country illustrates the devastating changes to American economic life more clearly than the city of Chicago. Now, the University of Illinois at Chicago has put out a series of maps charting just how stark those changes have been. It's hard to believe now, but as recently as 1970, fully half of Chicago's population was middle income, and they occupied the largest swaths of the city. You can see them in this map. They're in beige. Today, the middle class is gone. In red, you see the growing number of poor people, and in blue, you see the affluent. Basically, only 16% of Chicago is now middle income. Now it joins cities like Los Angeles, New York, and San Francisco, and every other progressive urban area you can think of as a city of the very rich and the very poor. Almost a quarter of the city is high income. That's the highest figure ever. Their carefully curated little colony of gentrification by the lake is serviced by the rest of the city's population, the 62% who are poor. Feudal lords surrounded by serfs. In Chicago, taxes are crushing. The public schools are a bad joke. They're horrible. And while the city turned out to be a safe place for Jussie Smollett, who had to invent an assault, other parts of Chicago are genuinely dangerous. The city records more murders than any place in America. Normal people cannot live there anymore. Why would they? In the more affluent areas, families don't have many kids, so Chicago has to keep importing immigrants from abroad just to keep its population stable. Does that sound familiar? Almost every city in the country is facing these same trends, and they're horrifying. In 2016, Pew looked at 229 American metro areas, and it found that since 2000, the middle class had shrunk in 203 of them. In almost every big city, the rich are getting richer, but the poor are also getting poorer, and there are far more of them. Do you want to live in a society like that? Radically unequal societies are dangerously unstable. People do not trust each other. Institutions corrode. Tribalism thrives. Democracy does not work. When everything becomes like Chicago, things fall apart. You'd never know this, though, from listening to our leaders. They don't want to talk about it. They're completely out of ideas, and in any case, they don't really care. But we should care, because this cannot continue forever. Tim Carney just wrote a new book about these trends. He traveled the country to do it. The book is called Alienated America. It is excellent, and he joins us tonight. Tim Carney, thanks very much for coming on tonight. So you spent a lot of time on the ground researching what has gone wrong in America. You discovered it wasn't simply economic. It was a breakdown in social relationships between individuals. What do you think the answers might be to this?
Well, you're right. I want to expound on the problem. It's not simply economics. Economics is often the first domino. It might be the way it shows up. But the big difference between those blue places and the red places you showed is that some parts of America have the things that we all used to count on for living a good life, which are the small institutions, the community organizations, the tight-knit neighborhoods that bring us together, that give us a sense of purpose, that provide a safety net. That's what's missing in the suffering parts of America. The struggle of the working class is that they don't have the access to those institutions. So when Trump says the American dream is dead, the reason the elites don't buy it is because they have the dream of those institutions. But you go out to the places I went out to for Alienated America, and you see it's not just that incomes are lower, it's that the community institutions that tie us together, that we rely on, aren't there. So any turning this around isn't going to be cutting a welfare check, isn't going to be a big government program. It's going to be finding a way to restore civic life out there in the parts that are suffering.
Civic life was sustained in so many places by religious institutions. The country has become radically more secular. Our leaders celebrate that because they are radically secular. But is that part of what happened?
That's absolutely the core of it, that the secularization of America is tolerable for the elites. Those North Shore towns you were showing in that Chicago map, when they turn away from church, they turn to some elite traveling sports team, or they have in the suburbs outside of the city a really strong public school with involved parents. They're doing they're in a lot of ways they're doing things right, but they're not including everybody else. They're cloistering off. But when the church gets chased out of public life, when the Obama administration says, no, you can't run an adoption agency if you don't have elite morality, that is killing the hopes of the working and the middle class. Because throughout America's history, the core institution of civil society for the middle class and the working class has always been the church. Chasing that out of the public square, either through their war on religion or through government crowding out, is deadly. You don't care for the working class and the middle class if you're trying to get the church to back out of serving other people.
That is, well, I mean, everything you've said is so clearly true. It's obvious when you think about it. I'm just struck by how nobody ever says that out loud, and I'm so grateful that you have. Tim Carney, excellent book. I hope it sells as many as it deserves to, which is a lot. Good to see you.
Thank you very much, Tucker.